Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with Part 4, the Hiramic Legend of Masonic Orders of Fraternity by Manly P. Hall. The Hiramic Legend. Solomon's Temple was the outstanding architectural monument described in the biblical writings, and it also received considerable attention from the rabbinical commentators and the latter Kabbalists. At a comparatively early date, this structure assumed symbolic significance and was associated with the spiritual, ethical, cultural, and even political institutions which human consciousness was attempting to perfect. Building a better world for the glory of God was a noble purpose, to which end men of good spirit everywhere might dedicate their lives, their honor, and their worldly goods. This was the everlasting house, built without the sound of hammer or the voice of workmen. The vision and the concept were Dionysic, but a Christian world, steeped in biblical tradition, selected a temple from its own sacred writings rather than some sanctuary of pagan mysteries. In 1 Kings 7, 13, and 14, it is said that King Solomon sent and fetched Hiram out of Tyre. This man was a widow's son of the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was of Tyre, and a worker in brass. This Hiram was filled with wisdom and understanding and cunning to work all works in brass. And he came to King Solomon and wrought all his works. In 2 Chronicles chapter 2, 13 and 14, it is Hiram, king of Tyre, who sent a cunning workman, the son of a woman of the daughters of Dan. This Hiram, the builder, was skillful to work in gold and in silver, in brass, in iron, in stone and in timber, in purple, in blue, in fine linen and in crimson. Also to grave any manner of graving, and to find out every device which shall be put to him. Tyre was one of the chief seats of the Dionysic fraternity of builders. It is possible that Hiram was a member of this fraternity, and on his arrival at Jerusalem, he instituted similar rules of government among the Jewish workmen about BC 1012. He received the title of principal conductor of the works, and if he were not the same as Adoniram, he succeeded him in the office next to the two kings and formed the third person in the Supreme Council of Grand Masters. See Royal Masonic Cyclopedia, edited by Kenneth R. H. Mackenzie. The third degree of Freemasonry seems to have been introduced in the year 1717, although Ragon suggests a date between 1640 and 1660. After 1723, the legend of Hiram, which is an essential part of the ritual of the third degree, assumed great Masonic importance. Distinguished scholars of the craft have indicated by their conflict of opinions that they have not been able to discover the actual origin or substance of this legend. Certainly, the slight and insignificant references contained in the Bible do not support the Masonic version of the legend. Although the story of Hiram was accepted as a historical account in the works of both Dr. Anderson, 1662, 1739, and Dr. Desert-Goudier, 1683, 1749, it had received no notice from early writers. Dr. James Anderson was a Presbyterian minister. The date of his initiation into the Masonic order is unknown, but he received the Gothic constitutions by order of the Grand Lodge, and his work, titled The Constitutions of the Freemasons, etc., issued in 1723, is a significant landmark. Dr. John Theophilus Desert-Goudier was a distinguished writer and physicist, and a fellow of the Royal Society. He was a friend of Sir Isaac Newton and was initiated into a lodge which met at the Goose and Gridiron in St. Paul's Churchyard. Through the assistance of Sir Christopher Wren, he was instrumental in the forming of the Grand Lodge in 1717 and had the honor of initiating the Prince of Wales. Dr. Desert-Goudier devoted most of his life to the advancement of his fellow man, but died in obscurity and extreme poverty, having achieved fame but no substantial material benefits from his industry. Dr. Anderson's references to Hiram are scarcely sustained by the scriptures. The good clergyman mentions that splendid time when the wise King Solomon was Grand Master of the Lodge at Jerusalem, and the learned King Hiram was Grand Master of the Lodge at Tyre, and the inspired Hiram Abiff or Abai, meaning Father of Magistry, instruction in the mysteries. See Pike's Sefer H. Debar M. was Master of Work, and Masonry was under the immediate care and direction of heaven, when the noble and wise thought it their honor to be assisting to the ingenious masters and craftsmen, and when the temple of the true God became the wonder of all travelers, as by the most perfect pattern, they corrected the architecture of their own country upon the return. The same type of thinking that inspired the 1611 revision of the Holy Bible and Bacon's New Atlantis, which was written somewhat earlier but was not published until 1627, focused attention upon the symbolism of the building of the Temple of Solomon and the rebuilding under Herod. Smith, in the Dictionary of the Bible, writes, "Perhaps no building of the ancient world had excited so much attention since the time of its destruction as the Temple of Solomon, built in Jerusalem, and its successor as built by Herod. Throughout the Middle Ages, it influenced to a considerable degree the forms of Christian churches, and its peculiarities were the watchwords and relaying points of associations of builders. If we have interpreted him correctly, Joseph Fort Newton regarded the Hiramic Legend as having arisen within Masonry itself, where it was held in strict secrecy long before the critical years of the 18th century. The time of its emergence has been mistaken for the date of its invention. General Albert Pike, whose Masonic scholarship was prodigious, favored the hypothesis that certain men of intelligence, especially Drs. Anderson and Desergudier, were responsible for the creation and introduction of the third degree of Masonry, at least in its modern form. Dr. Mackey, another researcher of distinction, considered Desergudier to be the father of modern speculative Masonry, and several others among the historians of the craft have insisted that Anderson and Desergudier manufactured the degree. For details, consult The Builders by Joseph Fort Newton and Ammon Reason by Dermot. In describing the symbolic Masonry of the early 17th century, Dr. Newton, who professes to be a student of the great mystics, favored mysticism but not mystification. He makes a profoundly significant statement. Wherefore go elsewhere than to Masonry itself to trace the pure stream of Hermetic faith through the ages. Certainly the men of the Grand Lodge were adepts, but they were Masonic adepts, seeking to bring the buried temple of Masonry to light and reveal it in a setting befitting its beauty, not cultists making use of it to exploit a private scheme of the universe. These men of the Grand Lodge, those men of intelligence, deserve a more thoughtful investigation than they have received from most Masonic scholars. Through Sir Isaac Newton and Sir Christopher Warren, Dr. Desergudier was associated with a descent of esoteric tradition from Bacon's secret society and his Phantom College of the 6 Days' Work, described in the New Atlantis. Desergudier, as a fellow of the Royal Society, must have been aware of the Society of Unknown Philosophers and other mystical associations of the preceding century. An 18th century German Hermetic manuscript in my collection declares Freemasonry to be exoteric Rosicrucianism. Those distinguished Protestant clergymen, Dr. Anderson and Desergudier, and George Payne, the Grand Master, exhibited certain qualities which suggest other affiliations suitable to advance the philosophic side of Freemasonry. The presumption that Freemasonry was formed at a late date by Rosicrucian mystics may not be tenable, but the opening years of the 17th century certainly brought with it the forces and factors which altered the course of Masonic descent. The initiation of men like Ashmole, who received the great work from a master of the Hermetic arts, cannot be ignored. Alchemy and ancient chemical speculation was being transformed from a physical to a psychological art at approximately the same time that guild masonry was being ensouled by a larger spirit to become a vehicle for the esoteric doctrine. As the pattern unfolds, the presence of invisible but powerful pressures can be sensed, if not fully seen, in the sudden enrichment of the mystical and symbolic side of Freemasonry, and in the elaboration and beautification of its rituals. A dramatic representation of the Hiramic Legend. The central scene revealed by the drawing aside of the curtains is divided into 3 tableaux. At the beholder's left is Boulder, the beautiful, slain by the mistletoe arrow of the blind god Hoth. At the right is shown the conspiracy to seal the body of the martyred god Osiris in a chest of wood and cast into the river Nile. The central group represents the death of Hiram Abiff at the hands of the 3 ruffians. The Hiramic legend certainly originated in at least a sober reflection upon the sacred dramas of the ancient mysteries. There are parallels with the Osirian rites of the latter Egyptians, and the treatment of the material suggests the type of interpretation of Egyptian religious institutions current among the advanced European intellectuals of the 17th century. A number of societies revived rituals and symbols pertaining to the earlier pagan institutions. Much alike in spirit and remarkably similar in form, it is unlikely that these productions were completely independent and spontaneous. It is more reasonable that they emerged from a common source which remained and continues to remain concealed. The effort to show that the Hiramic legend is a veiled exposition of Christian mysticism and morality is not convincing, though it has many devout adherents. The martyrdom of the builder suggests rather what Sir John Fraser calls the myth of the dying god. Even the elaborate Kabbalistic legends do not advance the Christian hypothesis. The story of Hiram is a timeless allegory, a key to the Christian mystery, rather than the reverse. The roots of so deep a philosophy are not to be found among associations of trades or crafts, merely dedicated to mutual comfort and protection. Men will not perpetuate without corruption that which they do not comprehend. If a higher order of initiates perpetuated the secrets of the Dionysiacs, it was most fortuitous that these, men of intelligence, should have united their projects with those of workmen's associations just at the time when a universal reformation was being agitated by secret societies. It seems as though the guilds and trade unions were drawn into a pattern of esoteric dissent as peculiarly suitable vehicles to advance the cause of the long-projected philosophic empire. It may be found when the rubble has been cleared away that Francis Bacon was the instigator of this significant project, and after him, those who were party to his program advanced and perfected the work. Several ancient groups were raised by his lordship and received from him the word of power, lip to ear. Unless we are aware of the adept tradition, we are inclined to accept that which is too obvious to be consistent with the dignity of the facts. In Freemasonry, someone rang a bell and brought the wits together, and Bacon acknowledged bell ringing to be his chosen task. Many streams of useful knowledge flowed along divergent courses throughout the medieval period. The modern world came into existence when those streams were drawn together by a sufficient reason, thus preparing a new world of essential learning for a new epoch in human history. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Rosies. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.